that region.
I see. Now, I've been to the East Gore Canal. Are you
Yes.
near there?
But the issue you'll find that when you get into
The Jordan Valley region.
and politics,
Until Syria.
Now, are you from Beijing?
No, Yael is from Beijing.
Yeah.
I'm from the Dead Sea region.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Tamar,
Yeah.
southern Dead Sea.
Yeah. Yes, 35 years. 35 years old.
Absolutely, look.
You see one of the big
Very
problems,
young.
the state's got the budget.
You want me to wait a few minutes, or you want me to start?
How do you share somebody else's?
Yeah, that's fine. Good. Good afternoon. A hearty welcome to the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, the official and living memorial to our 28th president. Today's event on cross-border community cooperation and rehabilitating the Jordan River Valley is co-sponsored by 3 of the Woodrow Wilson Center's 22 programs: the Middle East Program, the Environmental Change and Security Program, and the Comparative Urban Studies Project. This is, I think, the 3rd time that the Woodrow Wilson Center has co-hosted a meeting with Friends of the Earth, Middle East. I'm Mike Van Dusen, Deputy Director of the Center. I'm here to introduce this program because I want you to know how much importance we at the Center attach to the discussions these neighbors and friends of the Earth are engaged in. I regret that 2 of my colleagues who wanted to be here today could not be present. Dr. Hala Esfandiari, the director of our Middle East program, is out of the country unexpectedly in Iran. Dr. Jeffrey DeBalco, the director of the Environmental Change and Security program, is in Berlin, meeting with some European supporters of his important work here at the center. The Wilson Center is a public-private institution, receiving some government funding, but raising more than half of its resources from non-appropriated and private sources. The Center's mission is to bring together the scholars and the policymakers, the thinkers and the doers, the academics and the policy practitioners, and the confident hope from their dialogue on public policy issues. Each will learn from the other. The work of both will be enriched, and better understanding and better policy will emerge. As the only president the United States has had who had a doctorate, Woodrow Wilson spoke eloquently to the challenges and the mutual benefits of bringing these 2 worlds together. Through more than 600 meetings a year in the presence of 150 scholars during the course of the year, the Center's work and its scholarship commemorates the ideals and concerns of Woodrow Wilson. The Center is a nonpartisan center of advanced study, a neutral and civil forum for free, open, serious, and informed dialogue. Our aim is to inform the public dialogue with a broad hospitality to many different views. We believe in the magic of dialogue, and we believe that that is at the heart of our representative democracy. The Jordan River is a precious but fragile and threatened resource. Over the last half-century, the Jordan River Valley's water supply has been depleted rapidly, with some 90% of its fresh water diverted upstream to competing needs of Israel, Syria, and Jordan. In 2001, the organization Friends of the Earth Middle East launched a comparative initiative called Good Water Makes Good Neighbors, aiming to bring together Israelis, Palestinians, and Jordanians in order to preserve the fragile environment of the valley. Friends of the Earth Middle East facilitates water and sanitation collaborations among bordering communities that improve water management and health while fostering greater cooperation, greater local cooperation, and promoting greater regional peace, understanding, and stability. To discuss cross-border cross-border water cooperation and its potential, we have with us today 5 mayors from the Middle East, 2 from Israel, 2 from Jordan, and 1 from the Palestinian town of Jericho, as well as 3 representatives of Friends of the Earth Middle East. Yael Shataili, the mayor of Beit Shean Regional Council in Israel, is one of the mayors. Dov Lotminov is the mayor of the Tamar Dead Sea Regional Council in Israel. Mahmoud Ahmed Abu Jaber is the mayor of Muaz bin Jebel municipality in Jordan. And Wajdi Abdul Hamid Masada is the mayor of the Tabkat Fahil municipality in Jordan. And Hassan Saleh Hussein is the mayor of Jericho. The mayors are joined here by 3 directors of Echo Peace and Friends of the Earth. Gidon Bromberg is the Israeli director of Friends of the Earth Middle East. Nader Khatib is the Palestinian director of Friends of the Earth Middle East. And Munkith Rashad Mayar is the chairman, current chairman, and the Jordanian director of Friends of the Earth Middle East. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you again for being here. I know we will have a lively discussion and a productive dialogue. Everyone should know that this meeting is being webcast live on the Woodrow Wilson Center's website. I believe that Munkith, as a co-director of Friends of the Earth Middle East, is going to take over the floor now. I want to thank you and all of your colleagues for being with us. The floor is yours. I believe you will make a short PowerPoint presentation, after which the mayors will speak briefly. Again, welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center. Thank you. Munkith.
Thank you very much. Actually, I need to thank you twice this evening. First, for the hosting us here so many times. We really feel at home when we come to the Woodrow Wilson Center. The second time, I need to thank you for this wonderful opening and speech. You definitely made my job a lot easier now over here. Also, I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to UTEP, University of Texas in El Paso, thank you. In particular to Mr. Ed Hamlin for all the organization process that he went through and hosting us and taking us around the country. Thank you very much, Ed. I would like just to give a brief information about the Friends of the Earth Middle East, which is Echo Peace. We started about 10 years ago. We are a product of the peace treaty that signed in 1994 between Jordan, Israel, and Palestine and Israel. We are an organization that focuses on all kinds of projects with a transboundary nature. We have offices in 3 countries, in Jordan, in Amman, Jordan, in Beit Lahem in Palestine, and also in Tel Aviv in Israel. Our offices are in a constant contact. We are visiting each other on an almost weekly basis. We are in contact on a daily basis. The major projects we are conducting right now and in the past in the region, to start with is water. And in the presentation you will hear a lot about water issues and the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. One of the major projects that we've been working on since 10 years since we started is the Dead Sea. And you all know the challenges that facing the Dead Sea right now by the water level going down by a 1 meter, almost 3 feet per year. The Jordan River project, the Gulf of Aqaba project, and the challenges facing the Gulf of Aqaba in terms of the extensive tourism and competition of building a lot more hotel rooms than the ecosystem can handle beyond the carrying capacity of the region itself. And the mountain aquifer project, which it's the cooperation between the two offices in Palestine and Israel to highlight the extensive pumping from the mountain aquifer in Palestine. This evening, we prepared a short presentation for you to see, and we chose Mr. Bromberg to do the presentation, since he speaks in a English tongue with an Australian accent, but it's all right. Yeah, and we'll be very, very glad to listen to your questions and comments, and your participation and feedback, which I'm sure will be of a great value to the organization. Thank you very much, and Gidon, please. Thank you.
Can I have a microphone? Feel more comfortable standing rather than. So thank you very much. Indeed, my name is Gidon Bromberg, and I will give a short presentation on the cross-border cooperation that is taking place down the lower Jordan River and around the Dead Sea. The map on the screen here is a 2,000-year-old mosaic found in a church on the church floor of Madaba in Jordan, and it's in fact the oldest map of Jerusalem. But the highlight of the map, the largest feature of the map, is indeed the Dead Sea and the Jordan River, the lower Jordan that flows into the map. On the map, it's a river with fish, and there are fish you can actually see if you go to the church in Madaba. You can see the fish on the floor, and as they approach the Dead Sea, they're turning around. So the last fish is turning around, going back, because they're intelligent species. The Jordan River, the lower Jordan, and the Dead Sea are truly unique to the world. And part of that uniqueness is the cultural heritage that we find along the valley. I think there's no other place on earth that has the crossroads of civilizations that the Dead Sea and the Jordan Valley possess. And from the very earliest of times, we have the movement of mankind out of Africa along the Rift Valley, with the first human settlement, permanent human settlement, moving from hunters and gatherers to the first permanent communities taking place here in the valley. And that's because wheat is first cultivated anywhere on earth here in the valley. It's endemic to the valley. So be it Jericho, be it some ruins on the Jordanian side, or in the north on the Israeli side, some 10,000-year-old ruins of the first human settlements. And of course Jericho is the longest community continuously lived. But also from the biblical period, fantastic ruins from the Greek, the Roman. You have the cities of Beit Shan, with its sister cities of Pella and Gedera, Qais, in what is modern Jordan today, and a bridge of 2,000 years that still exists today that connected those cities. Similarly, onto the early Christian period, Islamic, Crusader periods. The valley has been a valley, has been a bridge. It hasn't been a border. When you look at the historical record, all of the communities have always crossed the river. The river has never been a border, unfortunately, until today. Similarly, at the Dead Sea, we see some of the earliest movements, the legendary movement of Moses coming out of Egypt, with Moses buried, according to legend, at Mount Nebo, overlooking the Dead Sea and the Jordan River. The trails of Jesus coming down from Jerusalem to the baptism site at the Dead Sea, at the northern end of the Dead Sea, southern end of the River Jordan, a site that is clearly holy to half of humanity. The palaces of King Herod also coming out of Jerusalem, Herodian, and then his ancient ports. And in fact, that was the common means of crossing the Dead Sea, of even going down. King Herod would take his boat south of Jericho and travel by boat down to his winter palace in Masada, another magnificent location. Makawa is, of course, the palace where John the Baptist was beheaded. The whole story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's wife, the monasteries of Lot's wife, they're all there in this unbelievable collection of the shared cultural heritage that so much of humanity share together. And again, you can see the old bridge. It's a 2,000-year-old bridge that connected the valley. It still stands today, the baptism on the River Jordan. But the valley and the Dead Sea are not only a crossing point of cultural heritage, but it's also at the crossroads of biodiversity. The valley, as part of the rift, it brings together 3 continents: Africa, Asia, and Europe. The acacia tree is an African tree, yet the most northern place on earth to find it is here in the valley. This is the most southern place for European plant species, the most western place for Asian plant species. So we're truly blessed by nature, by the interaction of nature around the valley. And of course, we're also at the lowest place on earth. The Sea of Galilee is minus 200 meters below the Mediterranean, and it continually drops down to minus 418 at the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea itself, of course, has magnificent minerals that make it a unique mineral spa, a unique natural spa, the saltiest body of water on Earth, a unique composition of bromides, potash, and magnesium and salts. Make it a major attraction for also health tourism, as well as a fantastic potential for ecotourism along the whole valley. We have a migratory, a bird migration, the 3rd largest bird migration on Earth, that takes place twice a year down the valley. 500 million birds move from Africa to Europe and back every year, and they have to refeed, they have to fatten up here in the valley in order to make the crossing across the Sahara on their way down to Lake Victoria. And therefore the biodiversity there is so important. But as Munkrith just mentioned, there's tremendous challenges facing our region, and it's due to competition not only between our respective countries, but also competition between the various sectors. And here we see that there is competition on water issues, and that we're far from perfect in the distribution of water resources between our different countries. But nevertheless, I think it's important here to highlight the amount of water resources that one sector at the moment is gaining, and it's clearly at the expense of other sectors, and at the expense of the river valley and the Dead Sea. It's interesting to note the contribution to GDP, to the economies, despite the high level of water allocated, the contribution to GDP is quite low. Not to say that agriculture is not important to the region. It indeed is. But nevertheless, the Jordan River has lost some 95% of its natural water flow. Due to the diversion, due to capturing those waters upstream, Israel in the late 1950s built its national water carrier, which basically brought a stop to the freshwater flow out of the Sea of Galilee. Not a drop of fresh water leaves the Sea of Galilee, other than once a decade, maybe when we have a major flood. Similarly, Syria has built major dams along the Yarmouk that were later added by Jordan with the building of the King Abdullah Canal, so that today as little as 30 million cubic meters leaves the Yarmouk, but presently a new dam is being built on the Yarmouk, which will bring the Yarmouk also to a complete halt. The 2 major sources of the lower Jordan, will no longer provide any water to the lower Jordan, a river holy to half of humanity, so that this is indeed highly alarming. From 1.3 billion cubic meters per annum we're down to about 100 million reaching the Dead Sea. The impact on the Dead Sea is dramatic. It's truly a catastrophe what is happening at the Dead Sea. You see how the Dead Sea has shrunk. We've lost a third of the surface area in the last 50 years, and we're continuing to lose. Indeed, today, the Dead Sea is dropping by 1.2 meters every year in depth. And we see those challenges felt in the communities, and I think that's why the mayors today are so vocal, because they are having to deal with these problems up front. The fleeing shoreline, where the peninsulas are cutting in to the Dead Sea, where tourism facilities were built. This is a site in Engedi. The Engedi Spa was built on the shores of the Dead Sea 15 years ago. Today, it's 1.5 kilometres from the Dead Sea, and you need to take a trolley car in order to get down. The sinkholes is a very alarming phenomenon, where the land under our feet is simply collapsing. There's over 1,500 sinkholes along the western side of the Dead Sea alone, with more on the eastern side. And that has basically put a stop to all new developments along the shore, as well as, of course, impacting the current livelihood of those communities that live along the Dead Sea today. And, of course, the state of the Jordan River is very, very sad. It's a photo of the Jordan River today. In fact, there's already been a study was conducted through support of the US government, the Middle East Regional Cooperation Program, that has already shown that in some summers the Jordan River has already stopped to flow. And this is before the final dam on the Yarmouk to be completed later on this year. As of the completion of that dam, the lower Jordan will simply not flow. What we do see in the river is diverted saline water, unfortunately some sewerage, both partially treated and untreated, and whatever rainfall can make it down. So a river wholly half of humanity is at a very dire strait, and you can see some of the sewerage flowing down. As mentioned, we've been very active in promoting alternative concepts for the lower Jordan and for the Dead Sea, trying to raise awareness. We work in two avenues. We work in the advocacy avenue by preparing concept documents and bringing experts, Palestinian, Jordanian, Israeli, together to work together in order to promote an alternative concept, and then bring that up to decision makers, hearings in our respective parliaments, meetings with our respective leaders, working with the media, but even more so, working with the public. The World Heritage concepts are concepts that we strongly support. There is only one Dead Sea on this planet. There's only one Jordan River. And therefore, we think, and we also know that UNESCO agrees with us, that they should become World Heritage Sites. Unfortunately, they're not there yet. A major focus of our work, as mentioned, has been a project called Good Water Makes Good Neighbours, where we work in 17 communities. 9 of those communities are not by coincidence along the Jordan River and the Dead Sea, each community paired, working together at the community level with the municipalities, with local schools, with community centres, creating in each community by having a local staff person, water trustees who volunteer from the schools for the benefit of their community, creating adult groups, working with the tourism sectors, and of course the Mayors Network. And the mayors have indeed shown incredible leadership. They have been the first decision makers to make these public calls to rehabilitate the river and the Dead Sea. And you see some of the actions that they've done. This is last year an event called the Big Jump, where we had the mayors, where the mayors volunteered to jump into the river together in a common call. This is Palestinian, Israeli, Jordanian mayors, some of them are here, who jumped into the part of the river that is still clean in a common call to rehabilitate it, that we can benefit economically and, of course, morally from a clean river, from a living Dead Sea rather than the current state. Just the other week during Earth Day, the Israeli and the Jordanian mayors came to a site where we're trying to create a peace park, where we believe Jordanian and Israeli citizens that live on both sides of that border could meet without the need for visas and passports. And the mayors joined a kayak on the river. Of course, they can't enter the waters because the waters are not clean enough to enter. The mayors of the two Dead Sea municipalities in the south, Mayor Litvinov is here. His counterpart mayor, the mayor from Safi of Jordan, meeting together, visiting the common problems that they have. At the back photo is a power station. It was an electric power plant built at the turn of the century in the 1920s and 1930s. It supplied 20% of the electricity of Mandate Palestine. Today, of course, there's not enough water in the Jordan River to create 1 kilowatt of electricity. There have been, and of course you've heard in the news, initiatives to save the Dead Sea. We strongly support initiatives to save the Dead Sea. We ask of, however, what is the fate of the River Jordan? We believe that the two must be connected. The idea is to build a canal from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. Yes, it might bring answers to the Dead Sea, but on its own, it clearly wouldn't bring any answers to the Jordan River. So we're asking that any study undertaken, any efforts undertaken, compare both. Compare the alternatives of the Red Sea to the Dead Sea, but also of bringing back some of the water. Not all, but some of the water. Striking a fair balance. That's what it's all about. What are some of the conclusions? There's no doubt that the problems facing the Jordan River and the Dead Sea are complex. There is no one single solution. The issues faced are multi-level, are multidisciplinary. It's water resources, it's the different sectors, it's the different countries, and therefore any solution truly needs to be needs an integrated development plan, and that's what we're calling for. That's why we are so supportive of World Heritage listing, because in order to be listed as a World Heritage site, you must present an integrated development plan. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is no plan, not on the Israeli side, the Palestinian side, or the Jordanian side, that looks to strike that fair balance, let alone a regional plan. And that's what we need to create. And we need a body responsible to implement such a plan. We had the honour of being in El Paso for this past week, and we met with the International Boundary Waters Commission, a wonderful example of an institution that we could learn from, and that we hope that we'll be able to bring on board. We're all about building bridges. That's what our activities are. That's what the activities of the mayors here is all about. Because we believe that by working together, not only do we advance the environmental issues, the livelihood issues of our residents, but we also advance peace between our peoples. The clear task ahead is a comprehensive terms of reference for the Dead Sea and the Lower Jordan River. That's what we're calling for. We think we need to further mobilise. The actions that we're doing locally has definitely brought tremendous attention to the issue. We need more attention, both locally and internationally, and that's why events like these are so important. But we also need pilot activities now. We need to show residents in our communities today that there's benefits from working together, that there are benefits, that we can strike the balance of both rehabilitation and economic gain for those residents living in the valley and around the Dead Sea. And that's our challenge. The building of peace parks, and we'll hear more about it from the mayors. Advancing tourism, because we see tourism as the economic engine that will justify the bringing of water back to the Dead Sea. Because without the economics in place, we well realise that we'll never be able to rehabilitate the sea, the Dead Sea, or the Jordan River. We also seek management guidelines and, of course, the commission that I mentioned earlier. So on that point, we just want to thank the State Department that has supported this visit through a grant to the University of Texas in El Paso. The US government has been very supportive of our Good Water Neighbours program over the years. It's a 5-year program already. Currently, it's under the support of the European Community. And other governments, the Finnish government, for instance, has been very supportive on the Jordan River, as well as other foundations that have been supportive throughout. So I give the floor back to Mukath for the mayors.
Thank you very much, Gidon, for, I call this from the heart presentation. You can feel the vibes that Gidon was speaking when he was really presenting. I would like to give the floor right now to the Mayor Yael Shatili from Israel to give us her comments and her feelings about the projects that we are working on. Ms. Shatili, please.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to thank the Woodrow Wilson Center for hosting us, and for you for coming and giving us the platform to put our problem in front of you. We live near the Jordan River, and we don't have the river because for almost 40 years there are fences that, besides what Gideon just said, that the river is dying. We the civilians don't have the river because there are fences, there are mines, and we cannot approach the river. In the year 2000, there was a
Research study.
a study of the Harvard University Graduate School of Design, and they have done research on the region, the Palestinian Authority, Israel, and Jordan. And the presentations were taken in Amman, Jenin, Bet She'an, Jerusalem, and Boston. And when we were in Amman, one of the architects, the great architect of Jordan, said that it's high time that the civilians will gain back the Jordan River for themselves. And that's what we are doing now. From one side of the river, and my two colleagues from the other side, we are just, I don't know if there is 10 kilometers apart, but until a few years ago, we didn't meet, we didn't talk, we didn't share the problems. And now we decided to do it, to start it from the region, to start it to contribute for the quality of life of our citizens. And we need to open, or we need to give the population place to meet. One of our ideas is a peace park, like a bubble, on the Jordan. Gideon showed you one of the pictures. There are bridges still bridges on the river, but we cannot cross them because it's a border. So our idea is to build a bubble where on one side is the Israeli park and the other side is the Jordanian park, and people can have a cup of coffee together and have a place where they can meet together. And it's the funniest thing was that I think about this idea a long time. And then Munkath was a guest in my municipality with the Minister of Tourism, and he was talking in front of the audience before me, and he said, "We are here in the park, in the Israeli park. Why can't we do it on the Jordanian park?" And he said, "I dream of the days that we could have here one park together for both populations." And I told him, "Wow, this is my dream too." And I hope that we will make it, because מתבקש, it's
It's requested.
it's requested, it's needed. We don't have places that we can meet, talk, like we, mayors, we have our project that we are meeting together, we are talking together, we are trying to solve problems, but not the people that are living in the region. And we have to create the place for them. We hope that we will be able to rehabilitate the physical part of the river, but we have to make an atmosphere, a place where also the people will be able to build the bridges among themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yael. Mr. Mahmoud Abu Jaber from Jordan, and I think I'll do a bit of translation here.
يا حتى تصل الفكرة لأني لا أتقن المحادثة يعني.
Yeah, in order to get the message through and clear, it's better to do a bit of translation.
نهر الأردن كتب فيه شعراءنا القصائد.
Jordan River been in many poetry,
وغنت له الصبايا في الأعراس.
and
ممكن تتكلم بصوت عالي شوي؟
وغنت له الصبايا في الأعراس.
oh my God, this is okay. And young ladies sang for Jordan River in weddings.
فيه كنا نسبح.
In that river, we used to swim,
ومنه كنا نأكل.
and we used to eat.
وعلى ضفته تقع مدينتي.
On its banks, where my town is located.
تجمع ما يعادل ربع حدود الشرق الأوسط. فنحن على حدود سوريا وإسرائيل والأردن، ولو جنوب لبنان عنا على بعد 40 كيلومتر فقط.
We are in the middle of the border that you can see Syria and Israel, and in a short distance also Lebanon.
ويتراوح منسوب أراضيها ما بين 190 متر إلى 200 متر تحت سطح البحر.
It is located about 200 meters below sea level.
يبلغ عدد السكان حوالي 50,000 نسمة.
Population is 50,000 people.
ومعظمهم يعمل في الزراعة.
Most of them, if not all, works in agriculture.
يبلغ طول مدينة بلديتي حوالي 10 كيلومتر.
The length of the city or town is about 10 kilometers.
تنتج حوالي 200,000 طن حمضيات سنويا.
Producing about 200,000 tons of citrus every year.
يوجد في مدينتي الكثير من الآثار القديمة الرومانية وما بعدها.
We also have a lot of archaeological sites, Romans and what's after.
آخر ما اكتشف فيها يعود إلى 2000 سنة قبل الميلاد.
What's been discovered last is a site that is about 2,000 years old.
أثبتت الدراسات وجود حركة تجارية بين مدينتي ومصر في ذلك التاريخ العميق.
Studies and archaeological work proved that with this location the trade was taking place about 2,000 years ago between the area and Egypt.
أيضا يوجد للبلدية مشروع سياحي علاجي.
In the municipality we do have a project of a medicinal nature.
مقام على مياه حارة تبلغ حرارتها 57 مئوي.
Based on the hot springs we have in the area.
فيها الكثير من الأملاح والمعادن المذابة.
Which contains a lot of minerals.
أثبتت دراسات الجامعة الأردنية فائدتها في علاج أمراض الروماتيزم وصعوبة التنفس.
It was proven that it is very good for rheumatism, arthritis, and also for the respiratory system.
وتعتبر منشط عام للجسم.
And extremely healthy in general for the human body.
الحقيقة هذا مستوى المشروع هو مستوى شعبي جدا.
The project is very public for the area.
نأمل أن نستطيع الارتقاء بمستوى لاستضافتكم عنا.
We hope to improve it to be able to host you over there also.
أريد أن أضيف بأن المواطن في الأردن حتى يقتنع تماما بالسلام ويعمل لأجله لابد أن يلمس الثمار بيديه.
I have to add here that in order for a Jordanian citizen living in that area to feel the fruits of peace, he must feel that his livelihood is improved also.
لذا لابد من أن تقوم المجتمعات الإنسانية الطيبة أمثالكم بمساعدة المنطقة بشكل عام لإيجاد مشاريع يستفيد منها المواطن حتى يقتنع بفكرة السلام ويعمل لأجلها.
That's why we are here, and we're going around to promote for this peace and to try to bring the fruitful peace for the area.
آمل أن تزورونا لتلمسوا طيبتنا.
I hope that you can visit us in the region.
كما لمسنا طيبتكم في هذه الزيارة العظيمة.
To be able to return some of the hospitalities that you've been giving us here.
شكرا لكم.
Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, Mayor Mahmoud. We listen to Mayor Dov, and in English this time.
And good evening. First of all, I want to thank the Woodrow Wilson Center for hosting us. We are, as we all know, the Dead Sea bring health to a lot of people, and but the Dead Sea itself is sick. We are here, the mayors of Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, in one mission. Despite the problems, the political problems that we are facing, we, the leaders of the region, are in one mission here, to tell you that the region, the Dead Sea, the lower Jordan River, is facing ecological catastrophe. And we see it every day. We cannot say that our governments are not doing nothing, but definitely it's not enough. It's not enough because there are other priorities. And we are here to tell the world that we need help to preserve this wonder. Then I think it's one of the most unique places in the world. The Dead Sea, as the presentation Gidon showed, the Dead Sea is the largest, we call it the largest natural spa in the world. It contains a high percentage of minerals that bring health and beauty to people. 4 unique elements that in this combination doesn't exist in anywhere else in the world. The fire that represents the sun, the healthy sun, because of the extra atmosphere. We are 417 meters below sea level. The earth that represents the mud, the unique mud that it contains with high percentage of minerals. The Dead Sea itself, that is a unique basin, the saltiest water in the world, 350 grams per liter, with 24 minerals that doesn't exist also in any basin of water. And the air that contains high percentage of oxygen and bromine. So this is definitely a place that we want to keep it for the next generation, and we came here to shout loudly, all the mayors together, to help us and keep this unique place to our kids and other kids and grandkids. So thank you for hosting us. We are also planning at the Dead Sea. We are in a process of building a research center at the base of Masada. The center will be dealing with research about extreme conditions, about medicine of the Dead Sea, about geological problems in the area, and cross-boundary also. We hope to host researchers from Jordan, from Palestinian Authority, and from other places in the world, and also students that will come to this unique center. So this is one of our projects, and we hope that will be established very fast. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dov. We'll give the floor to Mayor Hassan Saleh from Jericho, Palestine.
أولا أهلا وسهلا في هذا المعهد، معهد ويندرو ويلسون، وهذا الحضور الطيب يمكن باسمي وباسم زملائي بنقول يعطينا مزيد من الأمل أن السلام والنضال من أجل السلام والحرية هو شيء عظيم جدا.
First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming and to meet us in this very wonderful facilities here hosted by the Woodrow Wilson Center. And secondly, I would like to mention that it's this number of people coming to see us here give us a proof that we definitely have hope for peace and prosperity.
قبل شهر كنا بنفتتح مدرسة للبدو.
A month ago, we were in a ceremony to open a school for the Bedouins.
افتتحها جاك والاس القنصل الأمريكي في القدس وأيضا مسؤولين فلسطينيين. المدرسة
Jack Wallace from the American Embassy and a group of Palestinian officials opened the school.
ذلك ما أود أن أقول له أن الدعم المالي الذي يقدم لنا في المنطقة إنما يذهب لمساعدة أناس يريدون أن يكونوا في الحياة.
What we're trying to show here is that the financial support that goes to the region, to Jericho region in particular, goes directly to people who are really looking forward to participate in this life and the process of peace.
أنا رئيس بلدية أريحة. بلدية أريحة هي أقدم مدينة في العالم، عمرها بعد 4 سنوات يكون 10,000 سنة بالضبط.
I am the mayor of Jericho. Jericho is the oldest city in the world. 4 years from today it will be 10,000 years old.
وهي تطل على المشكلتين، مشكلة نهر الأردن الذي لا ماء به رغم أهميته الدينية والزراعية، وأيضا على البحر الميت من جهة أخرى.
Jericho overlooks the two major problems we have in the region. Jordan River, which lacks the water, and also the Dead Sea, which also hungry for the fresh water.
نحن في أريحة لا ننظر إلى النهر الأردن فقط كمجرد نهر. هذا النهر هو المكان الذي تعمد به السيد المسيح.
We don't look at Jordan River as only a river with the source of water, but it's also the river that had the Jesus Christ to be baptized in it.
هذا من جهة، ولكن رغم أهمية الجهد وما قدمه زملائي حول أهمية دعم حياة نهر الأردن ودعم حياة البحر الميت، إلا أننا في فلسطين وفي أريحة نعاني مشكلات من نوع آخر مضطر أن أتكلم بها أيضا.
In spite of the importance of to highlight the problems and the challenges that this river is really facing, in Jericho we are facing other problems. I find myself obliged to talk about it.
لأننا نعتقد أن السلام في فلسطين وفي منطقة الشرق الأوسط هو سلام له آثار إيجابية على العالم جميعا.
Because we think that the peace and the peace process in Palestine, in the Middle East, is not only affecting the Middle East, but also will leave traces worldwide.
لا شك أن هناك خطوات تمت منذ سنة 94 وما قبل نحو عملية السلام وتطورها، ولكن هذه العملية تشهد في الأيام الأخيرة نوعا من أنواع المرض الذي علينا جميعا، أنتم ونحن والعالم جميعا، أن نعالجه.
The peace process that is more than 10 years old today are facing problems today, and it is our responsibilities, both you and ourselves, and anybody knows about this problem, is to face it, to try to rectify it.
إن نحن رغم أننا تحت الاحتلال نمارس عملية ديمقراطية عظيمة جدا.
In spite that Palestine is under occupation, but we are practicing a very great democratic process.
لقد أجرينا أولا عملية انتخابية لمجلس النواب في المرة الأولى، وأيضا انتخاب الرئيس محمود عباس بنسبة تزيد عن 70% من الأصوات.
We did an election in when was it? Yeah, in 1995 that produced a presidency for the country, and the elections was over 70% of the people participated.
ولكن أيضا أجرينا انتخابات في بداية هذا العام، وكانت انتخابات ديمقراطية وجاءت بنتائج لا ترضينا قد ولا ترضي بعض العالم.
Lately we had an election that took place, and the results came in a way that we were not happy with it, and maybe a lot of other people worldwide was not happy with it.
ولكن كما تعلمنا منكم أن هذه هي الديمقراطية.
But exactly like we learned from you that this is democracy.
هذه هي الديمقراطية، ولكن الآن يبدو أن العالم يريد أن يعاقبنا على هذه الديمقراطية، وهنا هي المشكلة.
In spite that we practice that democracy, but it seems that the world is about to punish the whole Palestinians for practicing this type of democracy.
الآن وقفت كل المساعدات التي كانت تأتي للسلطة والتي تأتي أيضا، وهنا الخطورة، للمنظمات غير الحكومية.
Now all kinds of funds, aid, been stopped to flow to Palestine, to the authorities, and also to the NGOs, the non-governmental organizations.
وبغض النظر، وقفت كل هذه بغض النظر عن طبيعة القوى الموجودة، بمعنى أنا رئيس بلدية لا أنتمي لحماس.
Without looking at the authorities or responsible people on the ground. For instance, I am a Fatah person. I do not belong to Hamas. I'm the mayor of Jericho.
وقفت كل المساعدات التي كانت قائمة، كل المشاريع، سواء مع USAID أو مع منظمات أخرى، كافة هذه المشاريع وقفت. لا نملك الآن كيف نعطي المعاشات للموظفين صدقوني لا ندري إلى أين نحن ذاهبون.
All kinds of funds, all kinds of aid been stopped to flow to Jericho, to the municipality of Jericho. At this present, we do not have money to pay salaries. To be honest with you, we don't know where we are heading.
لذلك نحن نقول باقتراح محدد مؤسسة الرئاسة برئاسة السيد محمود عباس هي مؤسسة مع السلام، وقام برنامجها السياسي على عدم عسكرة الانتفاضة وعلى السلام وإلى آخره. وأيضا هناك البلديات التي لا تخص حماس، وأيضا حتى الموظفين. كل تركيبة الدولة هي ليست تركيبة لحماس.
You lost me here in the beginning. Yes, the elections brought also Mahmoud Abbas to be the prime minister of the country, president of the country, and also I have to mention here that the rest of the institutions in Palestine, like the municipalities, many of the municipalities does not belong to Hamas or even sympathize with Hamas.
لذلك نحن نقترح هذه القضايا كي نستطيع، وصدقوني أنا أتكلم أيضا عن الشعب الفلسطيني الذي يريد الحياة، يريد الديمقراطية، يريد السلام. ولكن
for that we are speaking of these problems right here or anywhere we go, because believe me that the Palestinian people, they are for peace and they want peace.
ولذلك أنا شخصيا هنا مع الزملاء من إسرائيل ومن الجانب الأردني.
For that particular reason, I am personally here with my colleagues from Israel and Jordan.
لنقول لكم ولنقول لشعبكم الطيب نحن مع الحرية، نحن مع السلام. لا تتركوا الشعب الفلسطيني يغرق في الظلام وفي الجوع. وشكرا.
To tell you that we are here to ask you to help us, to support us, not to let the Palestinian people to drown in the
مهر البيت في الليل وفي الجوع.
In the darkness and in hunger, and thank you very much. Okay, we listen to Mayor Wajdi Masadi from Jordan.
I would like to thank Woodrow Wilson International Center for the hosting. I got a cough.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I will not add so much what my colleagues are saying now, but what I want to say that challenges with that we are facing are the same: the lack of water and the poverty. We are all struggling. I think I am speaking about Jordan and Palestine. We have a low level in the of living if we are comparing with the Israeli, but we are struggling to find out a solution to be able to have the best our problems that mentioned my colleagues. We had one option for the solution of the water by the canal which is going from the Dead Sea to the Red Sea, and this is now the options that we have. It may have some disadvantages, but now I think we have to think about it to provide the Dead Sea with water, because it's suffering from losing 1 meter or much more yearly. I am the mayor of one of the cities on the Jordan Valley. It's not far from Beit Sham municipality. But I have never ever been there because it's politics, and there are some things that prevent me to go to there, some blocks, some things. But we are now gathering Jordanians, Palestinians, and Israeli to share how to solve our problems, because it's the common problems that we are facing. It's not bad to get as a minimum. It's better for nothing. So that I think beginning is much more better than not to do anything. And I also would like to say that we all trying to have a common language. We all try to share our opinions, and I think it's a good idea to be here. I would to thank again you for listening, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Wajdi. I can really sum in a few sentences what we all talking about here. Like you heard from the different mayors in the region, that the problems in the valley, in the Jordan Valley, are definitely common. We share the same problems. That is in a general environmental term. But when you go to each location, you will find each mayor express the challenges that he is or she is facing personally. We heard from Wajdi how he is hoping that he can bring the livelihood of the people to be equal to the Israeli society or economy, let's say. We heard from Mahmoud how his municipality is really also struggling to at least improve one of the projects that will improve the city in general. Needless to say, what kind of challenges that they are facing the mayor of Jericho and his very, very heavy task to be able to find enough funds to pay the salaries. And also on the Israeli side, they feel that their neighbors, their next door neighbors, and like you saw in the presentation, it's such a small region. Jericho is about 20 kilometers from Ain Judi. It's about 3 kilometers away from the Jordanian city of South Shune. Beit Sha'an is extremely close to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, where Wajdi is a mayor. So we all live in a kind of a neighborhood in your standards, really, not more than that. So you felt the agony, you felt the hopes that we all share. And it's worth mentioning here that it's not every day that you find this group sitting on one table together. So please take the opportunity, ask, comment, and we'll be all ears. Thank you. Please.
I'm just curious to know, as far as the conservation...
Excuse me, would you wait for a minute? You'll get a microphone, identify yourself, and raise your question. Thank you very much. Thank you, Munkith.
My name is Douglas Williamson. I'm graduating from American University in International Affairs, Natural Resources, and Sustainable Development. I'm curious to know, as far as getting water to the lake, the sea, and down the Jordan River, essentially you're talking about not diverting water, or you're talking about not damming up water. I'm curious to know what kind of solutions you're talking about as far as where is the water that's being used now going to come from, what is the opportunity cost of not damming up water or not damming up rivers in the upper valley, or of not diverting it for agricultural purposes?
Do you want to take several questions?
Altogether, or should we go
No,
one?
no, I think that's a very big question, and several of you may want to comment on it. So why don't you?
Hey, would you like to
Yeah,
start?
yes,
Dov? Go
well,
ahead, please. Yes.
First of all, bringing water to the Dead Sea, it's as you heard, there is one suggestion to bring water from the Red Dead in a canal. We are in favor of this project, and we are, of course, in favor of checking all the problems that it can cause, or if it's feasible. But we say also that we must bring also water through the lower Jordan River to save the Jordan River, and this is the natural way. The water can come from taking water in desalination projects on the shore of the Mediterranean, the Dead Sea, for example, Tel Aviv of Israel, and using this water and releasing water from the Kinneret through the lower Jordan River. This is one of the suggestions. Of course, we have to see that the water will get finally to the Dead Sea and not capture in the way.
Thank you, Dov. It's a very, very good question, and in fact, more of what Dov said, that the Red Dead might give us an answer, and they are talking about power generation and desalination in the Red Dead itself, but we don't know the impacts. We do not have enough information on that project to say, yes, it's a good project, let's go ahead and try to fundraise for it, or it's a bad project, or to highlight the impacts and work around it. The desalination is definitely an option, but in Friends of the Earth, we insist that along with the studies of the Red Dead Canal and the desalination, is to look at other alternatives in the region. What do we have in the Upper Valley? How about the reduce and reuse? Okay, we simply asking our governments to look into the water management plans more closely. Are we really using the water, our water, what's available in that very arid region? As you know, it's one of the 10 poorest regions worldwide in fresh water. Are we using it in the right way? Is the farmers using a high technology to use the drip irrigation and to grow the crops that are consume less and less water? If you go to the Jordan Valley, you will find it full of bananas, and we know that bananas are a crop that requires a lot of water, and citrus, and also watermelons. The irony also that the government subsidized the water so much that it's almost given for free for the farmers. And what the farmers do, they send these crops to sell it in the Gulf, in Jordan and Palestine case, and to Europe in Israeli case. So what are we doing? We are subsidizing fruits for rich nations, and the economic return are so lousy because the farmers always screaming, we don't have enough money to pay our debts. And the government, they are not only subsidizing the water, but also exempt the farmers from taxes and so on. So the management, the water management, is the most important solution we are talking about right now.
Gideon and Nader both want to comment on this.
Well, I think it's an issue. We're not against farmers, and we're not against agriculture. It's an issue of not putting all your eggs in one basket. At the moment, we have put all our eggs in one basket in the valley, and that is the predominant income for all three peoples along the valley is agriculture, and therefore, unfortunately, the poorest people in the region for all three countries are in the valley. They have the lowest economic returns of all three countries. They're in the valley. So agriculture alone is clearly not paying. We've done a study, again, at Friends of the Earth, together with Haifa University. There's a copy of the study here. It's also on our website, that looks at the economic returns of the current utilization of water resources. And it concludes that tourism, should we enable water to flow back down the river, should we enable tourism to fully develop along the Jordan River and around the Dead Sea, the economic returns of tourism would far outweigh the current economic returns of agriculture. So it's not against agriculture, it's striking the right balance. It's diversifying the economies in the valley so that people can benefit both from agriculture but increasingly from tourism and the cross-border tourism that really is requested when it comes to such a unique valley that we have.
Nader.
Well, just to add to what my colleague Gideon mentioned right now, I think the problem of the Dead Sea and the Jordan River are the result of the conflict, where all the parties competed unilaterally to utilize as much as they can from these resources without giving any attention to their neighbors. The end result that the farmers remain the poorest in the region, and we just overutilize the resources for nothing. And the only solution really is to start working together. I do believe that through peace, where everybody will work as one party, we can achieve solutions. Reallocating these resources among the different sectors in a better, economic way, more sustainable, I think the whole situation can be improved without even bringing more water from the Red to the Dead Sea, and focusing on the tourism, I think can be more sustainable and more beneficiary to the communities in the Jordan Valley. We have seen this in other communities, in the kibbutzim in Israel, which were based on the agricultural policy. Now, most of them are shifting to tourism, and they are generating more revenues. We need to start thinking regionally as one unit, prepare these plans in a way that we can support each other, support the peace process, and benefit everybody and care about each other. If we continue this policy of unilateral utilization, I think we just will create more problems and will never solve these problems in the region.
Yes, Sai.
Cy Taubenblatt, formerly Foreign Service and Foreign Aid, and many years ago I was very familiar with the water problems in the Jordan River Basin. Let me just comment on the Red Dead, because while I'm a little out of date, it appears to me that there was a major feasibility study done in the early 90s by Sir Alexander Gibb. And I believe, and there were further reviews of that study, and the conclusions then, it's about 12, 13 years ago, was that the project was feasible, but there was a price tag of approximately $5 billion, and I would say in today's prices, considerably higher. Secondly, there were still unresolved environmental issues relating to the Dead Sea, i.e., what happens when you blend Red Sea water with Dead Sea water? And so let me pose the question to the Friends of the Earth. Since this is an environmental problem, what happens when the chemistry gives you a chalky surface? Is that acceptable, even though you may, raise the level of the Dead Sea by, so many meters a year? I think these are clearly issues that still remain to be studied, and I don't have the answers to that, but I know they were raised in the feasibility studies earlier. One other comment: it appears to me that the solutions to the Jordan River Basin is really the creation of new water. And I don't think these problems can be solved with what I call the allocation of scarcity, or taking scarce resources from one nationality and trying to move it to another. The solution is new water. And water desal, seawater desalination is still, in my view, the most promising way of creating new water. You know, certainly from the Mediterranean. It's also been tried down in the Gulf of Aqaba. And I think it comes down to a question of price. But the technology is there. The technology has been improved. Almost every year you find better membranes and better, what we call hybrid desalination, where you blend electric power with the creation of water. And I believe that that's something that ought to be looked at more extensively as a potential source of water for, clearly Israel will need more water, Jordan, as well as the Palestinian state.
Yeah. You want to start? Go ahead, please.
I mean, I think in relation to the question of Friends of the Earth, where do we stand on the Red Dead? We are in favour of a study, and we believe that that study must tell us what will be the implications for the environment. We believe that we need a study that not only looks at the Red Dead Canal, but that compares reviving part of the Jordan with the Red Dead Canal, so that we can see if we invest $5 billion in the canal, if we were to invest $5 billion in rehabilitating part of the Jordan River, what are the pros and cons? Unfortunately, that is not being done at the moment, and our own governments and the World Bank are resisting that aspect of a study, of looking at alternatives. And we're meeting with the Vice President of the World Bank tomorrow to speak to him on that issue, because we think the Jordan, the Lower Jordan, and the Dead Sea have always been connected, and we must guarantee that they stay connected. There's another consideration, of course, that the best of science is never not necessarily good enough. Models are produced and they tell us one thing, and the result sometimes is different. And therefore, we must take extra caution here before any movement goes forward, before any project moves forward here. Because, as you say, should we alter the unique composition of the Dead Sea, we lose the natural value of its waters, and we lose the attraction as to why people come to bathe in its unique waters, and none of us can afford to do that. So it has to be a very serious study, and we certainly will not be in favour of the project until we see the results of such studies, and no such study has yet to be completed. Finally, further in regards to new water, I think that there is great potential from desal, and we see it, and we see it today. But we also are concerned that suddenly decision makers cannot come out and state that there's as much water as there is water in the Mediterranean because of desal technology. It still requires the burning of fossil fuels, with its air pollution considerations, with the loss of coastal spaces. So it's also a matter of striking the balance. And that's why, like in all issues, we think that we first need to utilize our resources, the resources that we do have, in as clever a fashion, in a conservative of a fashion as possible, but nevertheless see desal technology as an important supplement, but not a substitute.
Thank you, Gidon. I would like to add on what Gidon said, especially about the Red Dead. The problem lies in our governments, I think, because they are really treating this project with high complete secrecy. There's hardly any transparency in this project and the information. In Friends of the Earth Middle East, we really went in a battle to look at the TOR, the terms of reference that been conducted between the World Bank and the three different governments. And we tried to influence this TOR by our best we can. And like Gidon said, our main concern is not to look only at the problem of the water level. There is a lot in the Dead Sea. There is a lot more in the region than only the water level of the Dead Sea. The people that living around the Dead Sea, the flora, the fauna, the biodiversity, what they are trying to do is to raise the water level by putting two healthy ecosystems in jeopardy to save the Dead Sea. We're talking about Gulf of Aqaba. A huge amount of water will be siphoned from the Gulf of Aqaba, and it will be taken in an open channel first, about 11 kilometers long, and then up to the mountains, to pump it up to the mountains and all the way down to the Dead Sea. Well, Wadi Araba is a wonderful ecosystem. It's really nice, you know, it's healthy. Gulf of Aqaba, it's also still okay so far. Are we going to jeopardize these two perfect ecosystems to save the third? At the time that the natural well-being of the third ecosystem is absolutely not coming from the south. It is the north. And one of the slides where we showed the agriculture to the GDP and how much water you use in order to bring more money to the country, shows that agriculture should not be, like Gidon said, the main source of income to this region. Therefore, we believe that to give up a certain amount of water from agriculture back to nature, even not to tourism, is still okay if we are serious about it. And a lot of people accuse environmentalists to be dreamers. Oh, you're dreaming. Nobody will ever give you a drop of water for that. Okay, fine. We digested this accusation by, fine, give us the water and we'll use it for tourism, and then we use it for the nature. And that's how we are trying to put some alternatives on the table.
Okay. Yes. The lady here and then the gentleman across.
My name is Nadia Saad. I am World Bank environmentalist specialist in environment and particularly in water issues. I am concerned to hear you speak about tourism, because we know that tourism, if it is done in the normal, traditional way, is an extremely water-intensive activity. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I have participated in all the international conferences of the International Water Council, and we have made scenarios for water, and we have covered particularly this region, and the scenarios show that by the year 2025, all this region, beginning with the Israeli, all the Arab, semi-arid region, whatever we do, all the scenarios have concluded that we're going to face a very serious problem of water scarcity. So what we need is really creative thinking in defining another kind of tourism, in getting away from agriculture, but also introducing small-scale industries which would be linked to another type of tourism. And I also want to ask you if you know whether the peace pipeline, which was supposed to bring water from Turkey to Israel, whether it is still alive and whether it's completely out of the question. But what I would like to say is that we have really to think in some type of industrial activities that would help us get away from agriculture as our main activity. However, the Israelis who are participating with us in these technical meetings about water were always telling the Palestinians and the Jordanians, get away from agriculture. And the Palestinians were telling them, but listen, we are peasants, that's what we know, that's how we live. We don't know. You are the developed technologically people. You have to do that and let us do agriculture. You, the Israelis, take over the activities that are different. So my question is as follows. Number one, tourism, water intensive. Number two, what's happening with the peace pipeline. And number three, what about creative imagination to solve our problem?
You
Yeah.
want to answer?
Yeah,
I think that the tourism will contribute to the region, and we are not talking about a big consumer of water. We have a lot of attractions in the region, and I'm talking in the region from the Sea of Galilee, from the Kinneret to the Red Sea. Not to the Red Sea, to the Dead Sea. And what we need, what we are talking about, is to make the tourists stay in the region. Today, in my region, there are million tourists a year passing through, coming to all kinds of attractions, but they don't sleep in the region. They sleep in Tiberias, or they sleep in Haifa, or they sleep in Jerusalem. And the same at my neighbors. What we are talking is infrastructure and raising up the income of the local people from the tourists. That they are there, but they don't spend the money and don't stay. It's just a passage. That's what we are talking about. And we think that it will be very attractive if the three nations will prepare a master plan for the region. Tourists that will come to Jordan will come to Israel, to the Jordan Basin, and it will be a special attraction. About the pipe from Turkey, they don't talk about it in Israel anymore. They were talking about bringing tankers with water, but the plan of the pipe is not longer exist.
Right. I think to start, if I may, the Israeli-Turkish negotiations, I think it's collapsed now. There's not any more people talking about that, like Yael said. To go back to the tourism and the water-intensive tourism. Now, what we are doing in Friends of the Earth Middle East is talking about the type of eco-tourism rather than this five-star tourism. We were together, myself, Nader, and Gidon in Germany, and we met a group of tour operators over there, and they accused us immediately by that we are looking for a five-star tourism, that the ecotourism does not even exist, at least in Jordan. In Palestine, both of them do not exist at this time. But right now what we're doing in Friends of the Earth, that we are trying to make efforts to promote the ecotourism, promote the bed and breakfast idea. This way we are not promoting the Marriott or Hilton or Sheraton, those big chains, to be richer than they are right now. We are promoting that the people to be able to serve the ecotourists who comes to the area. Our area is extremely rich with, call it everything. We have the perfect weather, we have the archaeology, the history, religion, everything. We have uniqueness, like the Dead Sea, 400 meters below sea level, and the seawater and the minerals and the medicinal, a lot of things that really you can promote for a good ecotourism. In the very, very beginning, we we did a project in Gulf of Aqaba. We called it sustainable tourism, and the aim of that project is to educate the tourists. Once they come, they board a plane in Frankfurt or in New York or anywhere, that to have a brochure to talk about our problems as well as our attraction over there, and water is a major thing.
Dov and Nader want a quick
Yes,
comment.
two quick comments. It's when you deal with the tourism or ecotourism, that bed and breakfast, the money stays in the area and stays for the people that live in the area. And when you deal with 5-star hotels, it goes usually to the big chains and go out from the area. Another thing that you said, that you have to know that also in the Israeli side, there are people that the only thing that they know what to do is agriculture. So we have it also in the Israeli side.
Nader.
Well, I think I will start with the peace pipeline and the many peace pipelines which were suggested in late 80s and early 90s. I think in 92 we published a book through an Israeli-Palestinian research center called IPCRE. And we looked to the different options, these peace pipelines and the Medusa bags, the icebergs, desalination, wastewater, all these things. And the results also were presented in the first Israeli-Palestinian Academic International Conference in Switzerland in 92 also. And since that, nobody talks about the peace pipeline because it is very costly and politically impossible. And what proves that is the Israeli-Turkish agreement on transferring water through the Medusa bags. We know the filling station in Turkey on the Ceyhan River was completed, but the final agreement has been stuck. Although it is part of a military deal, because the desalination prices really dramatically dropped down. Now in Israel you can desalinate water for $0.50 per cubic meter, while they were bringing water from Turkey for 85 cents. So it's stuck, and nobody talks about this or bringing water from outside the region. As was mentioned also here, the technology daily improves and the prices are going down, which leaves the desalination as the potential resource. Also recognizing that the largest communities in Israel located along the coastal area, so you can avoid pumping to the mountains. Now we should not forget that also a major cause for the Jordan River Basin problem is the diversion of the water outside the basin, because it was mainly political decisions. Nowadays, and hopefully if there is a peace, mentalities can change and lots of water can be reallocated and can be worked together. With tourism, all studies have proved that whatever price you put for tourism, it can sustain it and tourists can pay for it. Okay? Of course, we do not want to promote conventional tourism in the region. We want to promote sustainable tourism and to improve the situation. There are lots of creative imaginations, from the icebergs to somebody suggesting using nuclear power for desalination, somebody also bringing water, to high levels, pump it through towers, allow it to go down, different technologies, waterfalls along the western slopes of the Dead Sea. There are things, but really we need to be realistic and to look to it from an integrated perspective, not from one perspective. This is the only solution.
The gentleman in the white shirt, and then the blue, and then over here.
Just a quick follow-up, actually, to the tourism.
Very quick.
Okay. I'm just still very confused about the juxtaposition between trying to save water and encouraging tourism. In order for tourism to really have an effect and pay for all of the stuff that you're hoping to do, it's going to have to be a lot of tourists. And, even if you have B&Bs and the money is staying in the area instead of going to Marriott, those tourists are still using water. I mean, we're talking about Western tourists here.
But you can recycle this water and bring it back.
Do you have numbers?
To agriculture,
or
for example.
studies about tourism?
Okay.
This is one what Dov just said, that you still can use the water, reuse the water. The book that Gidon, please raise it up, Gidon. That book took about 2 years study. We took the agriculture industry and tourism. We really studied all 3 industries, and the results came out. It's not our results, it's study results from the market, that the tourism is the future of the region. Now, yes, the tourists will need water, but like we said, we are not for the 5-star tourism. We are for eco-tourism. Tourists that are aware of the problems of the region. Tourists that are willing to use the towel 3 days in a row instead of washing it every single morning, using the same bed sheets and so on. Yes, studies showed that this type of tourism in our region is sustainable and in big numbers.
Tourists that want to
Also that we highlighted the Israeli experience. The farmers themselves, about 30% of the farmers in Israel make their more money from tourism, from the bed and breakfast, the simple bed and breakfast they offer for tourists. They make their money. We are trying to transfer this experience to the Jordanian and the Palestinians.
Gentleman in the white shirt's been very patient, and then the blue.
Thank you very much. I enter this debate. My name is Errol de Montiel, Peace Parks Foundation of South Africa. I enter this debate with a great deal of trepidation because many of your problems are shared in South Africa and what we are trying to achieve in Africa. As you know, we have identified 22 peace parks throughout Africa. We have a shared vision and a transboundary, cross-border type of arrangement. And I've been hearing a lot of comment about tourism and a lot of comment about natural resources. The whole idea behind our Peace Parks Foundation was a protection of natural resources. In our case, it was wildlife. We also looked, very similar to your case, we are very focused on the alleviation of poverty. It's one of our prime drivers in the foundation. And I'd just like to share a few thoughts with you of how we tackle this problem. Firstly, on the political level, we had a Nelson Mandela. And I think there are many people in the Middle East which you can choose as your champion. You need to find that person. The Middle East does not lack of leadership. So I leave it up to you. That's a minefield. I'm not going to suggest it. The second is we then, through Nelson Mandela, forced the Southern African government heads of state to sign on as patron chairman, if you like, of the foundation, which gave us access to a direct political line to any political problems that we perceived. It's worked out fairly well for us in some instances, particularly to the neighbor. I don't want to particularly talk about politics, but the neighbor to the north of South Africa has been difficult at times in terms of our agenda. That's the foundation's agenda in the protection of wildlife. But in times he has come around. So we still use lines to people that have very different political views to the scarcity of natural resources. In terms of poverty, and I want to address the question of natural resources, what we did, we created 2 institutes of which we got funded. One was for educating people away from taking of wildlife. The same as what you need to do is to educate people away from agriculture so that they can go into other industries. And certainly the lady across here was referring to some other industries which she felt that perhaps the people or the community in the area could do. The second was tourism, and I've heard a lot of skeptics here about the usage of water in tourism, that type of thing. We also started off in a very humble way. This is not Marriott, Ritz-Carlton type of tourism. This is bed and breakfast. The question of water reticulation was worked out very carefully. There are a lot of schemes being put into practice at the moment, particularly in the developing areas of Mozambique. where we are going to recycle the water, because water, I do come from an arid area, not as arid as the Jordan River, but certainly arid enough that we have to treat water with a great deal of respect. Secondly, we took a lot of people and we said to them, instead of taking the animal, you need to preserve and manage wildlife. So we have an institute that is in the hospitality industry, and we are training people in that area, and that's cooks, that's bed and breakfast places, that's simple bookkeeping, simple tourism. We're also taking our ideas into the community to develop other tourism projects which are away from water and away from wildlife. In terms of the wildlife, we have the South African Wildlife College, which we are producing managers in managing natural resources, and that includes both wildlife and water, who then go back to the community and spread the good word and train up other people. I could give you a whole list of other things, but I just thought I'd just touch on the two things and give you all the best of encouragement to continue your good work. If there's any way the foundation can help to bring about a peace park in the Jordan River, you have our support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I wanted, first, it's very encouraging. And another thing that encouraged me very much, 3 days ago, we were in El Paso and Juarez, and we were at the Chamizal Park. And we found there our rationale of the park, because they wrote there the theme that this memorial reminds us that we should try to settle our differences until with each other through friendship and understanding. And it works there. It works there. And now we hear that our vision is working in South Africa, so thank you.
In the blue shirt.
My name is David Shen from George Washington University. Two very short questions. One, what is the problem with UNESCO not declaring this a World Heritage Area? What's blocking that? And two, is Syria in any way engaged with what you're doing? I see there are no Syrian representatives here, of course, but is there any involvement of Syria in all of this?
Syria is taking water out of the Yarmouk.
Well, Syria definitely cannot be represented here, since we have Israelis in our delegates. So I wish that the time that Syrians will be on this table will be not far from today. That will make our job a lot easier. There is absolutely no information on what the Syrians are doing to the Yarmouk upriver. And us as Jordanians, and if you know the brotherly Arabhood, really we cannot question much. This is about the Syrians. About the UNESCO, we, like you saw on the presentation, we are really trying hard to declare the Jordan River and the Dead Sea as a World Heritage. In Israel and in Palestine, they listed the site of the Dead Sea on their short tentative list. In Jordan, we're still facing a bit of problems. We are lobbying, we are trying to gain as much support as we can to encourage the Jordanian government to list it on their short list. The reason is the Red Dead Canal. They think that if they declare the area as a World Heritage site, that will prevent them from to have a free hand to really execute and bring the Red Dead to the Dead Sea, the canal to the Dead Sea. What we are doing in Friends of the Earth also is to we are trying to lobby the UNESCO to bring a delegate to the delegation to Amman to really explain, to have a workshop on the World Heritage sites and man and biosphere sites, to explain to the Jordanians and the Jordanian government how the whole system works, that their development will not be touched. It's a very, very simple procedure. You have hot areas, the core, and then the rest of the basin that you can really do any kind of well-planned and studied development. I don't know if Gidon would like to comment more on this.
The gentleman in the orange and then yellow. And then, no, you're third in line.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Soslin.
Color code.
I'm a professor at American University. I'm also a citizen of Washington, D.C., and our highest elected official is a mayor. So I have a great deal of respect for mayors. But the issues that you're addressing, and they're important, they're very important issues, but the expertise usually in water and the environment usually lays within the Ministry of Environment or the Ministry of, for many of your governments, of water. And my question is, what role, in addition to your efforts, and your efforts are obviously very important, what role do the Jordanian, the Palestinian, the Israeli governments have in dealing with these specific issues that you're addressing, and particularly what role have they had since 2000 and the recent Intifada and the sort of the chilling of political relations? In addition to that, the water multilaterals, which were part of the larger multilateral process from the Oslo process, the one group that sort of continued on was the water group, the water working group. And I'm just curious what role that group has had in your efforts relating to water.
I'm not speaking.
You're not speaking.
I spoke too much.
Neither.
Well, I tell you, in Palestine now, after Johannesburg, apart from the Ministry of the Environmental Equality Authority, the Palestinian Water Authority and the Ministry of Planning rejoined Israel and Jordan discussing the question of the Red Dead, and they signed the terms of reference with the World Bank last year, and now they are raising the money for the environmental impact assessment study. Of course, as Friends of Earth, we have some remarks which we want to discuss tomorrow with the Vice President of the World Bank, which Gideon talked about. In the Environmental Equality Authority, their position is still against any joint activity. Even before the last elections, I met with the Minister Yusuf Abu Safiya, and he sent a letter to the cabinet at that time expressing his rejection to be part of that project. But as I said, now the three authorities are working with the World Bank. About the multilateral, the joint committees are still meeting, but not the delegation as a multilateral delegation, because I was part of that and very much connected. And because according to Article 40 in the Oslo agreement between between Palestine and Israel, every water project has to be approved and discussed within the joint water committee. And that's why they're still meeting. And of course, because the American involvement in the water sector, they also managed to put a pressure whenever needed to keep these people coming together. And that was good, really. And they managed to keep the water outside the conflict during the Intifada. Otherwise, the situation could have been much worse.
Thank you for that.
Excuse me. I
Yeah.
would like to-
Sorry.
Nobody wants to comment anything? Gidon? No?
Okay, your question about ministries of environment and how involved they are. That's your question in the beginning, right? As far as I remember. And let's face it, we come from a third world countries. Environment is on the bottom of the agenda, really. Only shortly that the government realized that environment is not a luxury. It's something that we really need to take care of. And that's how only 4 years ago, the Jordanian government assigned a ministry for environment, Before, it used to be a department under the municipalities ministry. Ministry of Municipalities, yes. So even that concept, it's still very young in the region. And the ministries of environment are still building up. Maybe we are lucky enough in Jordan, I'm talking about, that we have a young minister, Khalid Irani, who used to head the RSCN, the Royal Society for Conservation of Nature, which is a very old NGO that takes care of the environment, as the minister. And right now, only now, about 8 months ago, the ministry started to really build itself and to improve the knowledge of the employees and so on.
I want to add.
Yeah. Yes, Dov.
The Israeli Environmental Ministry finished recently a study, a report, not a study, a report about the future policy of the Dead Sea, and they presented to the new government. It's not enough, and it's not finished. I mean, it has to be. It have to be more to see what the report says that in the next 20 years the Dead Sea will continue to go down in 1 meter, 1 meter 20, and what are the consequences in the area. But it doesn't say what are the solutions. So that's why we say it's not completed, and now the next step of this report has to see how in the whole region, in the whole area, to cooperate with other ministers from Jordan and the Palestinian Authority to complete this report and to see what are the solutions. But they say in the 20-25 years ahead, we can face the continuation of the Dead Sea shrinking.
Gentleman in yellow, and then the gentleman in the red tie.
Don Wassman, National Defense University here in Washington, D.C. My question really concerns health issues, and it can have an impact on tourism, and it was inspired by Gidon's comment about all the birds from different continents flying over, and there's issues of bird flu throughout the world, and I'm just wondering, one, have you had problems in your
We are
communities?
healthy. We are all healthy.
How about the birds?
But I mean, if that would become a problem, and I don't know, I was just, I was asking, if it would become a problem, obviously it would be very detrimental to tourism. So if you could just tell us maybe something about you, is there any experience with this, and are there concerns?
First of all, we had flu. If you heard the news, we had flu birds in Israel, and I think they have also in the Palestinian Gaza, in Palestinian Authority, and they are treating the problem. I don't know if it's
No, we don't have anything.
Not in Jordan. Okay, so it skipped Jordan. No. I think in Safi, and they had also in Safi. He didn't came for the meeting because they thought they have a.
They thought
okay.
It proved negative.
Okay,
Yes.
it's proved negative, so it's okay. But of course they're dealing with the problem, and we don't feel that it affected on tourism in the area right now. I mean, but time will tell.
Comment on this? Okay.
Brief, yeah.
Yes. Well, in the last 2 months there were some cases in Israel and in Gaza Strip and also in Jordan. But the good thing, the area is over, and that was under control and stopped, and every authority declared that it is free of the bird flu. But the amazing thing is the joint efforts. Immediately the Israelis allocated resources for the Palestinians in Gaza, despite the tension and the politics in the region, to work together. And this shows that, environment doesn't know boundaries. And if we deal in that manner, I think we can tackle many problems.
The gentleman here, and then way in the back. Here. Go ahead, your turn. Yep.
Where does the Jordan River originate, Mr. Bromberg, and what's north of that?
Well, the Jordan River originates from the Hermon Mountains. the springs that feed the Jordan are three major sources. One originates in Lebanon, one originates in Israel, and one originates in the Golan Heights. On the other side, again from the Hermon Basin, the Yarmouk is also fed from the Hermon Basin system. The difference, however, is that the type of geology is that mostly the Yarmouk is floodwaters, while on the western side of the Hermon, the waters seep into the ground and they become springs that feed the Jordan River all year round, while the Yarmouk gets most of its flow in the winter floods.
Is there anything north of the Jordan River? Is there any water connection to Turkey?
No, there's no direct water link with Turkey. Of course, there are water resources that Lebanon has, which is simply independent. The Litani is an important river source that runs completely in Lebanon into the Mediterranean. And of course, further north of that, there are other rivers that are in Lebanon, and then north of that in Syria. So, Turkey is not an easy option in this issue.
Just to follow up on that, does the Great Rift Valley go north of Lebanon Syria border, so to speak?
Okay.
Does it go all the way to Turkey?
The Great Rift begins in Turkey and ends in Mozambique.
But the water doesn't originate in Turkey to go south in the rift.
No.
Right. Gentleman way in the back.
Eric Vollmer from the National Academy of Sciences here in Washington. And I'm wondering, to what extent are there collaborative activities among the scientific and engineering communities across borders? We see that there's collaboration among policymakers and non-governmental organizations like Friends of the Earth. But what about science and technology? Are there university partnerships, or are other research institutions collaborating?
Yes.
So?
Answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, in terms of scientific cooperation, there are several programs. First, the Merck program of the United States, where many universities, academic institutions, even NGOs been cooperating on water and environmental issues as a research. There is also the EU. There are the German universities and government. There are lots of activities between the academics in terms of research, and most of the time they deal with joint problems, including the Jordan River Basin.
Any others? Last question.
If I may, I'd like to make a comment.
Yes.
Ed Heller.
From
the University of Texas at
El Paso. Yeah.
I had the great honor of hosting his group of
We
delegates.
thank you for doing so.
For the first part of their trip when they were in El Paso in particular. And certainly there are lessons that they could learn from our experience, but there are also mistakes and pitfalls that they hopefully they can avoid. We have a settled border with Mexico for over 150 years. We have a rich network of institutions that work back and forth, and we've had a long history of developing water resources in there, and they saw the implications of the kind of instruments, the kind of approach we've used. For example, in the 1906 Mexican-American Water Treaty, 1944 Mexican-American Water Treaty, the Rio Grande Compact between the states, the Colorado River between the states, you don't see nature mentioned in any one of those documents. And as a consequence, in-stream flow is not a protected resource. And they had the opportunity to see the full impact of this kind of intensive, human-centered only water resource development of a river, the Rio Grande, translated big river. Mexicans call it Rio Bravo, the wild river, but that is neither. Hemmed in a straitjacket of levees, in some places concreted in, and they had the opportunity to see the upstream and the downstream of our city, where it goes from a meager flow released from the dams to zero flow, everything taken off into there. And this is the plight or the potential specter of what could happen in the Jordan Valley if we continue to only see the river in terms of human-centered focus, that the river as a river has no value. And if we only justify it based on what, well, maybe ecotourism, something like that. Yes, human purposes are important, but somewhere or another, we have to recognize the value of the river as itself, which I think is part of the message I hope that they would gain from their visit.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for being here.
Before
Yes, Yair.
I would like I'm sorry. I would like to thank you for hosting us and giving us the platform. And I would like
Oh.
first of all to give you the flag of my
Town.
my municipality, and secondly to give you something to remember with this meeting, and this is something very, very typical to the Middle East. So I'm sorry that I have to open it because I want to explain. This is Hamsa. Hamsa is good luck, and it's two doves, which means symbolize peace. So I want to thank you.
Thank you very much.
And wish you good luck and a lot of peace for all of us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yael, and thank you, Munkith and Gidon.
It's
and,
not over
and
yet.
Nader. Oh my God, competition. Two flags.
There's another one That's
Jericho.
Jericho.
Yep.
Okay.
About Jericho and its cultural heritage.